It's episode 510 of the Locked On Texas Rangers podcast. I'm your host, Brice Paterik. Today, I am breaking down the top 10 things that have happened in the past, decade that have made it so the Rangers window closed earlier than expected. That's right, the last time they made the playoffs was 2016. So I'm ranking the top 10 worst things to happen to the Rangers in the last, let's go 7-ish years. Yeah, I think that's the era that I'm going for. Basically the last 7 years, what happened, why the Rangers had to go into the tank for 2 years, and what has kept them from keeping that contention window open. All that and more coming up on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On to the Texas Rangers. I'm your host, Brice Paterik, host of the Locked On Rangers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today, I'm looking at the top 10 worst things to happen to the Rangers that closed their contention window early. But first, I want to thank you guys so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen of the day. And if you haven't already, go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Brice Paterik, follow the show at Locked On Rangers, and go subscribe on YouTube or wherever the heck you get your podcasts. Now, this is a bigger project than I initially anticipated. I'm going to split this into 2 episodes. I'm going to do today, Tuesday's episode, and then Thursday, I'm going to do a part 2 of a more uplifting kind of rebuttal, if you will, to this episode. And on tomorrow's episode, I'm going to be talking with Javi of Locked On Padres about all kinds of good stuff. But first, where did it all go wrong for the Rangers? This was one of the best teams in baseball from 2010, 2016, even a little bit in 2017. They made game 163. We're fine. We're a pretty good team, but have completely fallen off, have not been real contenders since 2017. Even then, they were kind of pretending themselves. They kind of backed their way into 2 division titles before the Astros were ready, 2015 and 16, and those were incredibly fun teams. Just, I'm not taking anything away from them. They were awesome. As Adrian Beltre getting some more chances at the playoffs. Obviously, the playoffs didn't go so well. It's still, chaps my biscuit. Is that a thing? I don't know. I probably said that phrase all wrong. But let's look at what was going on with the Rangers in 2016, the last time they made the playoffs. They had Adrian Beltre in his prime, Elvis Andrus, Ruben Odor, Mitch Moreland. That was their infield. Robinson Chirinos was absolutely killing it that year. They also had Prince Fielder at this time. Nomar Mazara was there. Ian Desmond was just crushing it in center field. Also, Shin-Soo Choo was around and popping. Also, Jurickson Profar, still a thing, still with the Rangers. And Jonathan Lucroy. There's also a little bit of Carlos Beltran. I don't really want to talk about it. But their rotation was headed up with Cole Hamels, Martin Perez. There was also some AJ Griffin, Colby Lewis, Derek Holland, and towards the back half of the season, Yu Darvish came back. Their bullpen was just downright disgusting with Sam Dyson, Matt Bush, Tony Barnett, Jake Diekman, Alex Claudio. Those guys were just ridiculously good. There was also some Keone Keala. He wasn't that great that year, but he had some pretty great years there as well. Same with Jeremy Jeffress as well. And also a little bit of Tanner Shepard. It was a good team. It was a really good team. And, not all of their stars were old. They had a lot of young guys, a lot of guys who were, just coming into their own. Nomar Mazara was 21 at the time. Ruben Odor was 22 at the time. Jurickson Profar, 23. And Joey Gallo, he did play 17 games, and he was just 22 at the time. So really still finding himself. At this point, I think he was still considered a third baseman, even though we all know he would make his way to the outfield and probably will never go back to playing third base. But what about the rest of this team? What about the farm system? They were fantastic. In 2016, they had Joey Gallo at this is all according to 6 total top 100 prospects in the Baseball Prospectus top 100 before the 2016 season. They had Joey Gallo at 15, Chichi Gonzalez 29, Jorge Alfaro 31, Nomar Mazara at 40, Jake Thompson at 47, Nick Williams at 71. 6 of those on the top 100. Ranked as the 4th best system in baseball behind the Cubs, who had a bunch of young guys that were just about to matriculate up and help them win a World Series that year. Also the Twins and the Dodgers, which, Dodgers have quite a few. According to MLB Pipeline, they had 5. They left off Dick Williams, but everybody else was in the top 100 as well. Also, a fun fact, the Rangers have 2 players that were ranked ahead of Joey Gallo on that list in Corey Seager at number 7 that year, and John Gray at number 13. That's according to BP's list. Now, let's rank the top 10 things that went wrong. We set the scene. We see where the Rangers are and some of the things that went wrong. But number one, it's got to be, this is no question, the worst thing to happen to the Rangers in the last 10 years. I'm talking about closing their contention window. I'm not talking about the fake thing that some people talk about in 2011 World Series that the Rangers didn't win it. That Nelson Cruz wasn't playing no doubles defense and didn't make that catch, that he was even in the game. But according to, as we all know, he wasn't in the game. Andy Chavez was playing right field. He made that catch. And the Rangers did win the World Series, and that is canon according to me. But number one on this list of worst things to happen to the Rangers that closed their contention window is Jurickson Profar injuring his shoulder. Now, in case you don't remember Jurickson Profar, if you're a little bit younger, if you young youths, come listen around. Jurickson Profar is a name that causes much pain to Rangers fans. He was the first prospect I ever loved, the one who made me fall in love with prospects and therefore baseball. Came up at age 19 in 2012, hit a home run in his first plate appearance at the big league level in Cleveland. It was beautiful. It was majestic. Everything was perfect. Everything was on the upswing. The Rangers were going to be amazing forever, and nothing bad was ever going to happen to my beloved Rangers ever again. That it didn't happen. In 2013, the Rangers made a trade. They opened up second base for this top overall prospect, according to multiple sites, and heading into 2013. He played 85 games in 2013. Wasn't super great, but bounced around a whole lot of positions, which was a theme for his time with the Rangers. He played second base, he played DH, he played shortstop, third base, first base. He did everything. But he didn't have consistency, so he didn't know what to prepare for, and therefore things didn't go super duper great for him. He had 6 home runs in 85 games, 11 doubles, had an on base of 308 and slugged 336. Now, everyone knew he was going to be a star defensively, and he was going to have a great on-base percentage. The question was, is he going to be around 10-15 home runs, or more like 20 to 25 home runs? I think I lean more towards 20-25 home runs. And, he's only hit 20 twice in his career, once in 2018, 2019. But anyway, Rangers open up second base for him. They trade Ian Kinsler, a perennial all-star, a fantastic second baseman, one of the best players in franchise history, a part of so many great Rangers teams. They make a trade for Prince Fielder. We'll get into that in a second. But they do that on November 20th of 2013, and Jurickson Profar injures his shoulder and does not play the entire 2014 season. He doesn't play in 2015 either, with another injury. Those injuries combine to basically rob him of any arm strength, and he does not get anywhere near to living up to his potential. Now, what was his potential? I'm glad you asked. There's a lot of great stuff written about him in Baseball Prospectus. They had him as, I think, the top overall prospect, and this is some of the stuff that they wrote about him. They had him as a Rule 7, a perennial all-star, with low risk. He already made the major leagues at age 19, and they had him projected to hit 300 with a very high on-base percentage, with 20 plus home runs and 20 plus steals, as a premium defender at shortstop or second base wherever he ended up, depending on what would happen with Elvis Andrus. And he was a guy that gave a 7-hit tool, a 6-arm, 6 potential glove, 5 plus potential power, and 5 run. That is like, you do not see that. That is Francisco Lindor levels of good player. That's about what I thought his comp would be. A switch hitter who, does those kind of things and is just so stinking rare and hard to find. Guy who hits about 25 home runs while playing premium defense up the middle and absolutely crushing it. That didn't happen, and things went south from there. I'm going to tell you all that and more of what else went wrong with this Rangers team. First, I got to talk to you guys about our sponsors. All right, Rangers fans, it's already been an interesting offseason, and it won't be long before Pitchers and Catchers report. I'm here to give you the inside track on the absolute best fantasy baseball platform in the industry. It's called Fantrax. Fantrax is the most customizable MLB fantasy platform in the industry, offering the greatest fantasy experience for your dynasty, keeper, redraft, and all the best fall leagues. Create or join Fantasy Baseball Commissioner League. Invite your friends to dominate the season. You can go deep in the Ultimate Keeper Leagues. Create a simple redraft league, or even a customizable best ball league with up to 1,000 teams. If you're coming from another service, it doesn't matter. Fantrax can import any of your current leagues and customize if needed. If you ever had a trade go wrong, or make a mistake dropping a player, the Fantrax Commissioner tools, they allow you to undo a move with a simple click. It's among the most trusted names in fantasy sports since 2008. Fantrax invites you to sign up today for free. If you do, you'll be entered to win an official MLB signed Fernando Tatis Jr. baseball. Simply go to fantrax.com/lockedon. Use our promo code Tatis when you sign up to be eligible to win. If there's anything lacking in your current fantasy league managers, Fantrax has it. It's great. Don't miss this opportunity to sign up today. Win an official MLB signed Fernando Tatis Jr. baseball. Simply go to fantrax.com/lockedon and use promo code Tatis. Fantrax, the home of fantasy sports. Play ball. Now, this episode is also brought to you by DirecTV Stream. Does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live, another that lets you stream your favorite shows, watching sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbor's best friend log in for the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all the entertainment you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes, and no need to buy another device ever again. The best part, there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. Now, I've already read you a little bit about what happened with Jurickson Profar, and obviously part 2 that comes with that is Prince Fielder and his neck injury. This guy was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. One of the best, most consistent players in baseball. And, his neck injury came as a complete shock because he was the definition of an Iron Man. This guy was the closest we've had to Cal Ripken since Cal Ripken. It's just incredible. From his first full season in 2006 until his last season with Detroit in 2013, that is a 8-year span, he missed 8 total games. Only one of those came after 2008. So he didn't miss a single game from 2011 all the way to 2013. He only missed one from 2009 to 2013. It's just absolutely insane how durable this guy was. And he wasn't just durable, he was also ridiculously productive. His career 162 game average is just fantastic, even with these down years, his final 3 years in the big leagues with Texas. For 162 games, he averaged, 32 home runs, 32 doubles, 85 walks, 116 strikeouts, had an on-base for his career of 382, career slugging percentage of 506. 506 and 382 on base. This guy was just so clutch, so crucial, and was going to be the best lineup partner that Adrian Beltre had since peak Josh Hamilton. They needed it badly. It was a great trade at the time. It made sense. Ian Kinsler was still in his prime. Detroit was still going for it. They could unload this big contract, and the Rangers could, take it in. He did have an all-star season with Texas in 2015, but again, those neck injuries completely robbed him of his power. The last time he slugged over 500 was in 2012, his first year with Detroit. The guy was just an absolute machine when it came to raking and walking. He was fantastic at it, and it robbed him of his career. This neck injury ended his career at the age of 32. He could have played so much longer. He could have been so much more consistent. Again, if he didn't have that down production, which I think kind of started in his second year in Detroit. He was still an all-star that year at age 29. But you kind of started to see him slipping a little bit. Nobody knew anything was wrong. It wasn't anything malicious or anything by Detroit. It was just like, all right, this is the time where we can afford to offload this guy, get a really great second baseman, and still try and compete with this window we had. And it just did not work out. And it's just an extreme bummer that it didn't. I really wish we could have seen more Prince Fielder. He was such a delight and so much freaking fun to watch. And it's a shame that he didn't get to play longer, and that injuries robbed him of having a much longer MLB career. But, from what we've seen from his son, just warming up in ballparks, he'd take BP at ballparks. He's probably going to be a pretty good big leaguer someday, too. Now, this next one, I've already talked about it a little bit. We did an episode, I think it was about a month ago with Grant, maybe 2 months ago. I don't know. I'm losing track of time. But this is one that still will bother me for a long, long time. This is Nomar Mazara just completely... everyone being wrong about Nomar Mazara. He completely plateaued and was supposed to be fantastic. This huge guy. He was a top 100 prospect everywhere the year before he made his major league debut in 2016. He was as high as, let's see, where'd we go? He was number five in the top 100 according to Baseball Prospectus in 2016, behind Corey Seager, Byron Buxton, Lucas Giolito, and J.P. Crawford. Now, all those guys have had much better MLB careers than him. J.P. Crawford, not as much, but he still has had a better career outside of that. But his rookie year, he comes in, plays 145 games, hits 20 home runs, on base of 320, could be a little bit better, slugged 419, could be a little bit better, finished top 5 in rookie of the year voting, a little bit below average OPS. This is a guy who's projected to have, on base of somewhere in like the 350 range, an OPS from like 800 to 900. You put him in the middle of your lineup, 25, 30 home runs, no drama, just absolute, machine of a hitter. And he just never was. He just never got better. He completely stalled and just didn't improve at all. From making the big leagues at age 21 to last year in 2021 as an age 26 guy with Detroit, played 50 games and wasn't even good enough for a bad Detroit team. Wasn't good enough to play in Chicago when the Rangers traded him for Steele Walker and a few other prospects. I think Avery Weems as well was part of that deal. They were still trying to sell high on him. He had a 786 OPS season his last year in Texas, 19 home runs in 116 games. Was his best OPS by far. And he just has not lived up, had an OPS under 600 both of his last 2 seasons in the big leagues, and just hasn't come anywhere close to what the Rangers thought he was going to be. That is a huge blow. Of the 2 prospects that were the Rangers' top guys in 2015 and 16 in Joey Gallo and Nomar Mazara, almost everyone thought like this Nomar Mazara guy is a surefire, cannot miss, like as can't miss a hitting prospect as you can get in baseball. And that's what he was. And he missed, because prospects will break your heart. Prospects make no sense. Baseball makes no sense. And even the guys who you think this guy is definitely going to have a 10-year big league career at the very worst has made it 6 years in the bigs, and I don't know that he's going to sign with anybody in the major leagues for the next season. Maybe he'll go over to Japan and figure some stuff out, or maybe he'll go all the way down to the KBO and figure some stuff out. But this was one of the biggest head scratchers. The Rangers didn't even sell high and capitalize on his trade value after seeing him kind of plateau even after the 2018 season, which was his 3rd year in the big leagues, and he's still only got an OPS of 750. Like, at that point is when I thought they should maybe think about selling high on him, but they didn't. They waited another year. His trade value went down. They got a couple of middling prospects. Avery Williams might end up being okay. Steele Walker, not so much. But this is just one of the huge head scratchers of the many, many head scratchers that have happened to the Rangers. I know I'm only at number 3, but these next ones are going to go by pretty quickly. So just give me a little bit of respite, because these are some pretty heavy hitters, these top 3. But number 4 is also a very heavy hitter. But first, I want to tell you guys about Stance socks. Stance is the most comfortable socks that you'll ever have. The apparel is super well made. It's soft. It's super unique. They're fun to wear. They got all kinds of great little designs. They will last a long time. And I've been hearing lots of good things. And once I saw some, it's the perfect holiday gift, the coolest gift you can give, while still being socks. They've got shirts, joggers, and hoodies as well. So not just socks, there's all kinds of great stuff. They were founded in 2009. Stance Apparel represents a radical reinvention of socks, underwear, and active apparel with a sharp focus on comfort, quality, creativity. Stance brings an atypical aesthetic alongside some of pop culture's hottest collaborators for the ultimate style and self-expression. Stance believes in perfect fit, not more than fitting in. Those who feel good, they do good. Go see for yourself. Register for an account at stance.com. Get 15% off your first purchase. Use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout and enjoy the color and comfort of a life less ordinary with Stance. Now, these are the biggies, and I kind of blew by a little bit of Nomar Mazara and how good he is, because we've done episodes on him before. He was ahead of guys like there's so many guys he was ahead of: Jose Barrios, Aaron Judge, Tim Anderson, Brandon Rogers, Blake Snell, Austin Meadows. All these guys he was ranked ahead of, and it just did not quite work out. But there's a couple other guys that I want to mention that just, for whatever reason, didn't pan out as well. This is a big one that I think we forget about a lot. But Neftali Feliz was a guy who was just so stupid highly ranked going into, before he was a closer. He was a fantastic closer for the Rangers in 2010 and 2011, also a little bit so in 2009. But when they started to move him into the rotation, he had Tommy John surgery and was just never the same. He won Rookie of the Year back in 2010. He was an all-star in his first year. When they moved him to the starting rotation in 2012, it had pretty decent results at first, but he only pitched 42 and 2/3 innings and was just completely gun shy, was just never the same. And he was a guy who sat 95, like mid 90s, and touched in the high 90s through 5 innings as a starter, which was just super, super impressive. He also had the power breaking ball to go with it and a changeup that was looking about average. That's the makings of a really stinking good starter, with the fastball playing as high as it did, as fast as he threw it. It also had movement as well. It was late movement as well. It was just fantastic. And, I understand why they moved him into the pen. Like, it made sense at the time. It really did. And it made sense to try and get him as a starter. Tommy John happens to everybody. Like, it feels like at this point, not literally everybody, but basically everybody at this point. It's just one of those things. And he was kind of gun shy about really letting it fly after that. And that's why he hasn't had nearly as much success. Even going back to the pen, bouncing around with a few teams. He pitched this year for 2 different teams in Philadelphia. He pitched 2 games and had a 36 ERA. He pitched in 3 games for the Dodgers this year, 3 innings, and did not allow a single run. So maybe he'll figure it out. He's still only 33 years old. That's the thing. He was so young when everything kind of fell apart when he was a starter. He was 24 years old when they moved him to the starting role. Maybe he should have just stayed in the pen. In hindsight, it seems like that was the right role, but I really don't blame the Rangers for doing that. His arm just kind of fell off, and it just didn't quite work out. Now, we're going to speed through these last couple because they're all pretty straightforward. Rougned Odor falling off an absolute cliff. He was a guy who was projected as a 7-hit tool back in 2013, actually maybe before the 2014 season, by Baseball Prospectus, a guy who they warned could get a little bit over aggressive at times, had its OPS over 780 in 2015, 2016. It's just the fact that he just stopped walking at all. That's really what derailed his career. He was unable to adjust. He just completely sold out for power. He did have 3 30-plus home run season, 2016, 2017, and also in 2019. But there wasn't a whole lot going on beyond that. The only time where he had an OPS over 750, the only time he had an OPS over 750 and he hit 30 home runs was that year in 2016 as a 22-year-old. He probably came up a little bit early. That was the 2014 season when everybody was injured. And I think that just really completely stalled out his career. He got into some bad habits, had a little bit of success early, and it got to his head when he really needed more seasoning. He didn't even spend that much time at Double A. He pretty much was just straight up from high A to the big leagues because everybody was injured, and it was a lost season for the Rangers, so they wanted to try and get him some looks at age 20, or if he had waited even a year, really, if they even waited till 2015 to bring him up, I think that really could have yielded some better results. They should have just gone and got some free agent that was just washed or fine or a little bit below replacement level, and I think that would have yielded some really good results instead of rushing Roogie to the big leagues. But obviously that didn't work out, and here we are. He's still a big leaguer. He's going to spend the year with Baltimore, and we'll see where that goes. But another guy who kind of fell off unexpectedly, Chichi Gonzalez, a top 100 prospect for several years according to Baseball Prospectus, who was about as safe as you can get. Another one of these like safe guys. The Rangers have made a bunch of high upside, like high risk, high reward, dangerous choices, if you will. Chichi Gonzalez was not that. He was a first round pick that was supposed to be very serviceable. His first year in the big leagues at 2015, had 14 starts and a 3.40 ERA in 67 innings, struck out 30. He's never going to be a big strikeout guy. He had a 109 ERA plus, so he was above average. Then he threw one bad changeup to Troy Tulowitzki in the playoffs, which he crushed, and the Rangers ended up losing that series. And he, for some reason, lost his slider. It just never had the feel for it. He was a guy who was basically fastball in 3 different ways. You had a, 4-seamer, cutter, 2-seamer, and also the slider was his big wipeout pitch. All of that came out looking the exact same, so he was really difficult to navigate, but was supposed to be a serviceable, middle of the rotation guy, very high floor, and he, fell through the floor. And it was just a huge bummer that he never quite lived up to that. Another guy who didn't quite ever live up to his, prospect level of expectations was Martin Perez. He was with the Rangers from 2012 all the way to 2018. Never had an ERA. Actually, He did have 1 year where he had an ERA below 4, but was a guy who was consistently in the top 100s of prospect lists overall, not just Rangers top 100s, but top 100s overall. Had great stuff, but he could never really make the most of it. Was extremely inconsistent. This year had a fine year with Boston, a 4.74 ERA, bounced between starting rotation and the bullpen. His best year with the Rangers was 124 in the third innings back in 2013 as a 22-year-old, a 3.62 ERA, an ERA plus of 1.14, and that was the highest ERA plus he's ever had. So again, just a guy who had immense potential, never quite lived up to the expectations, only pitched more than 150 innings with the Rangers twice in 2016 and 2017, and even then he was about major league average both those years. So that was a huge bummer. Another lefty who actually lived up to his expectations before injuries completely robbed him of his career. Matt Harrison made his first All-Star team in 2012 as a 26-year-old, a 3.29 ERA, pitched 213 innings for the Rangers, an ERA plus of 133. It was really the Rangers' best starter that year. He was incredibly dominant. Actually, no, CJ Wilson was a little bit better than him, but still, he was very effective, very dominant, but back injuries completely robbed him of the rest of his career. Never pitched more than 20 innings in a season for the rest of his career. He was part of the Cole Hamels trade and never made it back to the big leagues, never quite recovered from that back injury. It's a real shame. He had 2 great seasons with the Rangers the season before, had a 3.39 ERA in 185 innings. So those 2 back-to-back seasons where he looked, all right, this looks like this might be a guy who's going to stay for a while. And nope, that never quite happened. Now, let's breeze through these last couple. The last one I'm going to barely even talk about because it just makes me still so angry to this day. But this last one that I'm going to really get into is Jonathan Lucroy just never quite living up to his potential when the Rangers traded for him. He was just completely outdueled by Robinson Chirinos, and he got mad that he wasn't guaranteed the starting job. But before that, he was one of the best catchers in baseball. He finished top 5 in MVP voting in 2014. The Rangers acquired him in 2016 to kind of help bolster their offense. He was an all-star in 2016 when they acquired him. He was an all-star in 2014 as well. And in 2014, the year that was his best career year, he had 13 home runs. He had an 837 OPS. He was a guy who was the best defensive catcher in baseball, and just for some reason, it just fell off. He had a 6.4 WAR season in 2014. Yeah, 6.4 as a catcher who didn't hit for a crap ton of power. It was truly incredible how well he had done. Before that, he had a 2.3, about an average of around a 3 WAR season every year for a catcher. That was providing a lot of value and was still kind of on the cheap. So it's so frustrating that he didn't live up to that in Texas. He was 30-31 in his years in Texas, and Robinson Chirinos was just better than him, and he kind of pouted about it, and things just completely fell off a cliff, and it just did not go well for him in his time with Texas, which is a real shame because he had such high potential. I was going to mention, Joe Palumbo, Cole Reagans, and Brock Burke injuries. Those aren't quite there. I felt like that was a little bit more of a disaster for the Texas Rangers. And the last one, this happened in the 2015 draft. The Rangers could have had a whole lot of people. I'm not even going to get into how all the people they could have had. If you want, just go look up the first round of the 2015 MLB draft and get mad for yourself, because I don't want to relive it. I've relived it several times, and I still get white hot rage to this day. They wanted Alex Bregman. They would have gotten Alex Bregman if they had the number 1 overall pick, which they were in line to do for the entire season until Ron Washington resigned with about a month left in the season. And for some stupid reason, this dumb team started winning games for no dang reason at all and ended up with the 4th overall pick, which they used to draft Dylan Tate instead of getting Dansby Swanson or Alex Bregman or, anybody else there. Even Andrew Benintendi would have had a better career than Dylan Tate, who is a middling reliever with the Baltimore Orioles now. They settled for a guy who made the transition from being a starter from the pen to being a starter in 1 year in college and looked pretty good, and thought, okay, yeah, let's do that. For some stupid reason, it didn't work out. It was very dumb. I believe Walker Buehler was in that draft as well. That's the one that really sticks in my craw. The Rangers could have had him, but no, they just didn't scout nearly as well as the Dodgers. Neither did anybody else. I think Buehler went to in the late teens, if not the early 20s, in those picks. But they knew within basically 1 year that, okay, this guy's not going to go anywhere near his potential, traded him for half a season of a mediocre, washed up Carlos Beltran as a DH to bolster their playoff run, where he did nothing in the playoffs, absolutely nothing in the playoffs, and didn't do much of anything during the regular half of the regular season, or however many months they had him in the regular season that year. So that was a number 4 overall pick, the only time they picked top 10 in, I don't know about that decade. I think they might have picked top 10 in 2019. I can't remember. But it was the highest pick they've had since, I don't know, the 1990s or early 2000s. So just a real bummer that didn't work out, and all these other things that didn't work out. Like, you look at this list and you're like, oh my God. Like, the Rangers should be contending, like, right now. They should have been contending in the final years of Adrian Beltre. They should have been contending in the pandemic season. They should have been contending in 2019. 2015 and 16 were supposed to be the kind of down years. But those ended up being the last good years that the Rangers had. There should have still been some Jeff Bannister pushing his never ever grit stuff in 2018, 19, whatever. That didn't work. But you know what? I'm going to give the Rangers a redo. I'm going to look out in the next, I guess, part 2 of this episode. Not going to be on Wednesday, but it's going to be on Thursday. I'm going to look at what this 2019 team should have looked like the last year of the Rangers before the full-on rebuild. I'm going to give them a makeover of what things should have looked like if I had my way. Not everything going right, but enough things going right that things look much better and much more improved, and the Rangers would still be contending in 2020 and 2021, and maybe wouldn't even have a need for Corey Seager. I know, it's blasphemous to say, but I think there is a scenario in which that could have happened, but that's not where they are. The Rangers do have Corey Seager and Marcus Semien and John Gray and Cole Calhoun, and things are looking better for next year than they were last year, and there's plenty of upside there. But thank you guys so much for listening to Locked On Rangers. If you haven't already, go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Brice Paterik. Follow the show at Locked On Rangers, and go subscribe on YouTube or wherever the heck you get your podcast. I'll be back tomorrow and on Thursday and maybe Friday. Still working on a Friday crossover. We'll see where that happens. Also, I'm going to have Levi Weaver on the show next week at some point, TBD. Levi Weaver, the Rangers beat writer of The Athletic. If you don't know who he is, he's a great follow, a great guy, a great guest on this podcast. But thank you guys so much for listening to the show, and until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.